welcome back. I am so excited. I know a lot of people are very apprehensive about this film that I'm about to see, but I'm actually super excited. I feel like I've kind of, not changed my opinion, but I've altered my expectations for this one, and I'm just excited to see what they do with it. Of course, I'm talking about The Exorcist Believer. This is the first. I got very confused because a lot of people were talking about how this is the second in the trilogy, but this is meant to be the first in an upcoming, this trilogy of The Exorcist, which is not a reboot, but it's a sequel to the original. So it's kind of like exactly what happened with Halloween. In fact, it's directed by the same person who did the Halloween trilogy, David Gordon Green, which was not my favorite, but I digress. This film is a little bit different because obviously it's based on The Exorcist and it takes place after, I'm assuming like many years after the first Exorcist film, and it reintroduces some of the characters from the original film, including of course Chris McNeil. I really am surprised that this is happening this way, but am I? I don't know. What I am excited for is that this film stars Ann Dowd, who is one of my favorite actors that kind of like pops up, like she's in Hereditary, Compliance, Handmaid's Tale, and every time she pops up, she brings terror and dread. And I'm really hoping her character is gonna be a focus in this one, but the whole thing about this is I'm very interested in how this is gonna be turned into a trilogy, and I do have a theory, and it's got to do actually with the haunted house that they did for Halloween Horror Nights that I went to in Orlando. I felt like there was like maybe a spoiler or a clue to how this would become a trilogy, because it is, or it seems like to be from the trailer. I have watched the trailer for this one. And I did a reaction on my Patreon, but it seems like a cut and dry story. So it's very confusing how this could be the start of a trilogy. What I mean by this, it kind of shows in the trailer that there will be a complete story of an exorcism. So it is about two girls this time that disappear in the woods, and obviously some possession happens. I'm gonna leave it pretty open, and Linda Blair is not meant to be returning in this trilogy as Regan. I have a hunch that she will not be returning in this film, but she may be down the line. It's going to be really interesting to see what her mother in the film says, what happens to her. So I'm really keen to see that and see how that blends in. But I'm also very interested to see how they keep it going, because obviously with Halloween they just kept the same story going throughout the whole thing. Michael Myers, the fight to finally overcome him. So in this trilogy, like, what is the deal? If they get exorcised in this film, how can it go on? So that is what I'm really intrigued about. I did just watch the original again, but I've seen it like, I don't know how many times, a lot. I've seen it a lot. So I just wanted to keep it fresh in my mind. And I'm just really excited to go in kind of blind and let you guys know whether it is worth your time. I honestly think it probably will be, because it will just be so interesting to see what they do. I know a lot of people aren't as optimistic as me, but I'm going to give you, as always, a spoiler-free reaction to let you know what aspects are touched on without spoiling anything, because I love doing that. So let's get going, because I cannot wait. I get to see this a little bit early at the local premiere. So let's go see The Exorcist Believer. I hate that title. It makes me think of Justin Bieber. So let's go. I just finished watching The Exorcist Believer, and guess what? It's not bad. I personally think it's a good movie. Ooh, I did not expect with what this director did to Halloween, which I did not love the Halloween trilogy. The way it was stretched out, the way it was paced. I know I'm going to compare them just because this is a trilogy also and it's the same director. I did not believe that I was going to really appreciate some aspects of this film, in which I did. The film is about, as we know, two different families who have two different daughters, and for reasons you'll discover, they go out into the woods and disappear. And 3 days later, they are found, but something's wrong with them. Something is wrong with them. The film definitely explores, as we've seen by the trailer, explores different aspects or different types of religion to a certain degree. I feel like they were trying to be a lot more inclusive with this, but they really didn't go too hard on it, which I would have liked to see more, and I feel like that's a little bit misleading in the trailer. But I'll tell you some really awesome aspects of this film, or the reasons I really liked it. I thought that the way it seamlessly blends into the original film was done really well. The cinematography and the stylization is like to a T of the original film, but modernized. It actually took me a moment when the film starts in a past story that's very important to the film and that goes forward, kind of like The Exorcist, the original, where we follow the story in northern Iraq. So I thought that was interesting how things kind of mimic each other, but also in all of its shots and like cinematography, the wide shots, it really mimics kind of like old storytelling, and it wasn't this like modernized, over color graded, looking real slick, especially for a Blumhouse movie. It didn't mirror that, which I was really impressed by, and I felt like it, especially after watching the original one, this one just blends in like seamlessly, and they really use that kind of old wide shots, and I guess the composition of the way they frame things mimics that original movie. So I really liked that. The look, everything was just kind of like in sync, and I thought that was really cool to watch it along afterwards, like after watching the first one. It does feel like part of the same franchise and not like something completely different, which is something that comes up time and time again with these sequels or reboots or requels, whatever. If it's meant to be in the same franchise as a original film, why make it that original film and then completely change it? So I liked that they gave a lot of nods to the original, and I found they did that in like quite tasteful ways, which was very surprising. The acting in this film, I really loved it. I believed everything, and I actually thought it was quite scary. Believe it or not, I thought that the build-up and the tension, especially to the girls and them going missing, was like really interesting, and it really put you in the shoes of the parents, and I just really liked how the story was told and the tension it was holding with me. I was very much on the edge of my seat, and I thought that the children, the two girls, the actresses, were phenomenal in these parts. I always am impressed by child actors, but this is a really hard role to pull off, and I can't imagine how it would have felt being in some of those scenes. So I really liked that. But something that also helped with that was, again, the another stylization aspect, but the makeup. I thought that the makeup and the transition between them being, their normal selves and to being turned into slowly transforming as the film goes on, I thought it was just awesome. And it also mimicked what they did to Reagan. So I just thought it was really well done in those like certain aspects. I didn't feel like they used too much CGI, and I felt like everything was still quite practical, which again mirrors a film from the 70s. And of course the music, just like the original, there's not like obviously we know the original song, but that's kind of like remixed through it. But a lot of the film, it takes itself very seriously, so it doesn't rely on over dramatics and music in the background. It's quite I wouldn't say it's a quiet film, but in terms of music, no music for a lot of the film, which I like because it's not relying on that to really get you going, which I think a lot of modern horror movies, as much as we love music, they like really try and pull on your heartstrings or get you terrified by putting in like an intense song. And especially, I always talk about this when people attend school, like if the movie's about teens or tweens and they're going to a school, they love in America doing the flyover crane shot and the school sign and the school bell rings and there's like a catchy song that everyone knows at the time to kind of stamp a moment in time. And they didn't do any of that. It took itself really seriously, which I liked. But it also, again, mimicked what the original did with the different sounds and that being quite jarring. Where in the original, there's like moments where these loud sounds happen in the background and they're not meant to be scares or anything like that, but it's just meant to show this kind of chaos that is happening internally or stirring up like something is about to happen. They did that again in this film, and they allow those loud moments to make you feel uncomfortable, whether or not they're even uncomfortable things you're watching. I'm not talking about later in the film when other stuff happens. I'm talking about at the start when there's loud people on the street and things like that. They don't stray away from showing those kinds of things. And I think it makes it kind of more realistic because whose life is usually just in tune so you can hear the dialogue. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it just shows life is not stopping for anybody. As for the film story itself, I have a lot of questions, but I don't want to get into it. But I do think it was as good as it could have got. Like, we were always really worried about The Exorcist. I'm a big fan of The Exorcist, and I know a lot of you guys watching are a big fan. And I think for what we knew about the director and for knowing this is a new Exorcist film, I think that they did pretty well to modernize the story. Do I think it's better than the original? Heck no. But I do think that it pays a lot of tribute and it's still quite a scary story. And that was all I really hoped for. It hit the mark for me with what I was expecting. I don't know how you could make it better because there's nothing that could be better than The Exorcist while staying in the franchise. I feel like just having that hanging over your head is enough. And with a film like The Exorcist, it's kind of like The Shining. You're biting off more than you can chew already by taking on the project. So I feel like it ticked all the boxes of what was satisfying for me. And of course, Ann Dowd was fantastic. And I don't understand. She needs an Oscar for anything she's been in. I absolutely love her. She was adorable and I just need more of her all the time. Not enough Ann Dowd for my liking, to be honest, but I was just so happy to see her in this film. I think that The Exorcist Believer is an interesting but solid start to this trilogy. I do have questions about where it goes next, and I'm gonna leave that really open for you guys because I just don't want to touch on any of that. This is spoiler free, but I do have questions, and I think when you watch this you will have questions. But all in all, I feel like if you want to go see a good possession film, this is a great possession film, and it's done with a lot of care and a lot of detail. I think that the lead up is a lot stronger than how the film ends. I wouldn't say it's a bad ending, but it feels like you were just kind of going through the motions once you get to a certain point. But the original kind of does the same. Once, it is heightened, a lot of things kind of happen at once and you're kind of watching a montage of different aspects. And I feel like this film did that and wasn't really sure where to go. But with this kind of idea and possession by nature and exorcism by nature, it's always going to be a dramatic drop-off, if that makes sense, unless you go really hard like the Pope's Exorcist and you really want to overdo the CGI and bring in a lot of different elements. Where this film, I feel like it relied heavily on the actresses and the makeup and tried not to pull in too much special effects. So I am going to leave it there. I hope you go out and check out The Exorcist Believer, especially now the writer strike's over. We're hoping for the actors next, but this is a good start and this film is, I think it is worth your time. It's very interesting and I would be very interested to hear what you have to say. I was very intrigued by the story. I felt like it had a lot of soul and I hope you guys like it too. I can never tell, especially when I go to these premieres and then afterwards I'm like, oh my God, I liked that. Is everyone else going to hate it? I think I had already come to terms with having an Exorcist remake or, for this, a sequel, and it was going to happen. So in that regard, I think that this is the best case scenario. I'm going to give this one a personal score of 7 out of 10. I'm going to give it a scare score of 7 out of 10. And I'm going to give it an originality score of
3. Which says enough. But I hope you guys check it out, and I'm very keen to see your thoughts. I'm very keen to see what the rest of the world, and especially our community, thinks about this film. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't checked it out yet, I did a whole video on what's coming out this month, and there is a lot. So you'll want to check that out, because this month is full to the brim of horror, and if you don't want to go watch this one at the cinema, you've got plenty of choices at home. Like, this is probably the most packed I've ever seen a month in the whole time I've been doing these what's coming to streaming videos. So definitely check that out. And I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye, friends.